Morning, afternoon, evening people, welcome back to the channel. One of my favourite days of the year, honey extraction day. So I've just extracted and jarred this honey. Batch number for this is 0124. So if you've got a jar of honey and you're here because you see the label on the bottom, directs you to this YouTube channel. If your batch number is 01/24, this is your honey being extracted. So let's get into it. So first things first, when's the honey ready to be extracted? Now basically honey, when it's below 18% moisture, the bees will cap it. If it's above 18% moisture, it can ferment. So the bees won't cap it so it's above 18%. So rule of thumb, so if your frame's at 80% capped, the honey will be below 80% moisture. However, we don't leave that as guesswork because you can use a refractometer to get a reading of the moisture content of your honey. You don't need to. If it's 80% capped or more, it should be fine. However, I am going to take a refractometer reading for this honey. Now you can pick these up really cheap. I know it looks like a scientific piece of equipment, about £15 on Amazon. I'll link them in the description. Anyway, so let's take the refractometer reading. This frame here, I managed to knock this while I was transporting it from the apiary. So take a bit of that honey out of there and just put a dab of it on the refractometer. And just put the lid down. Make sure there's no air bubbles in there, and then we look through here into some light. So what I tend to do is open the back door, and there's Teddy, and take a look through. Okay, so this is just above 16% moisture, so very dry honey. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and see if the camera can focus through so I can show you. Don't know if it will or not. If it won't, I'll put a screenshot of what a refractometer should look like. Okay, so I don't know where you can see that. Where that blue line is where your reading is. Okay, so we're happy that honey's ready now. 16.5% moisture, brilliant. Next step, so we're going to sterilise all our equipment, and I use this Milton steriliser solution. It's what you would use for babies' bottles. So it is 100% food safe. We also wear surgical gloves and a very fetching hairnet. The last thing we want is any hairs or anything in our honey. Okay, so everything's washed and sterilised. Next thing we move on to then is decapping. Now I don't have a dedicated decapping station because I'm only doing about 10 frames at a time usually, so no need for it. So what I use is a bowl with a bit of cheesecloth to catch the cappings, and I can then squeeze the honey through the cheesecloth after, which I'll show you. Now that honey that comes out of the cappings just goes in a jar. I usually just put in my tea or coffee. Doesn't go in with the main honey. Anyway, let's start decapping. So let's just take our decapping knife. We don't want to go too deep, and just carefully take the cappings off. Then with using a bowl, you just spin it around. And any bits we don't get, we just get our decapping fork, just gently decap those bits. Spin it around. This is that frame that I damaged in transit. Again, decap the other side. and we pop the frames into our extractor. Now this is a 3-frame extractor. I'll give you a closer look in a sec. So there we go. So we just pop our frame in there. Three frames. Okay, we've now got 3 frames in our extractor ready to go. So all we're going to do is slowly start the extractor spinning. Might get a bit of wobble on at the beginning when it gets going, and then we're going to spin our honey out. Now sometimes the reason you might get a wobble on is when frames are uneven in weight. So just keep hold of it. And there we go, it's stabilised now. Okay, so once we've extracted one side, let me pull the frame out and show you. So we've extracted the honey from that side of the frame. Now we're going to spin it around and extract the honey from that side. So we're just going to turn all 3 frames around and repeat. Another thing to bear in mind is just be careful when you put the frames in. So we want to cause the least amount of damage to the comb as possible, because we'll pop these supers back on the beehive. The frames are intact and the bees will just go ahead and fill them again. Okay, so now we're extracting the other side of those frames. Now the frames are lighter, you can see that the extractor is much more stable, not got a wobble on. Okay, so I've got another 3 frames in. I've just had a taste of that honey and it is absolutely beautiful. Okay, there where you can see at the bottom there, it's now full of honey. So the next stage is we open the honey gate, let the honey go through this 2-stage filter. It's got 1 filter, and then below that another one. I believe the bottom filter is 4 microns. So what's now going to happen, the honey is going to run out of there through the 2-screen filter into the bucket. Okay, so the cheesecloth with my cappings in. Look at the amount of honey in those cappings, look at that. What I like to do is just squeeze every last bit of honey out of those cappings. There'll still be a slight amount of wax in it, but I don't mind that. I'll just put that in a jar and that'll be going in my tea or my coffee or on my toast. See the amount of honey there? Probably half a jar there just in the cappings. And what I like to do is just put the extractor at a slight angle. Let's get the rest of the honey out. Now I weighed the container before the extraction, 650 grams. So at the end we'll weigh it and we'll see how much honey we got from those 10 frames. And then we'll move on to jarring and labelling. As you can imagine, with that filter being 4 microns, it's a slow process. It's pretty much just a waiting game. So make a cup of tea, have some lunch, sit back and just wait for that honey to go through the filter and for the honey to settle. Okay, so filtration process complete. There's the honey settling. So let's have a weigh in. So around 8.1 kilos. So that's coming at 868 something. The container weighs 650 grams, so just over 8 kilos. Okay, jarring process. So I'm using £1 jars, 454 grams a pound. So we pop on the scales, zero the scale. Pop it on the scale, 441. That's 470 grams there, so it's over, that's fine. Okay, so extraction complete, honey's all jars. I've got 18 jars, plus 3/4 of a jar, plus that. So this is for me. These 18 jars will be going to customers. So, labelling. Well, I've got 2 labels on the jar. These labels, and then the second label goes on the bottom. The second label has got the weight, £1, 454 grams. It also mentions on there the batch number. It also says if you want to see how this honey was produced, head to Tony and Teddy's World on YouTube, Beekeeping Library. So if anybody buys a jar of honey, they can also come and see how the honey was produced. So that label I pop on the bottom of the jar. There we go. I'll give you a closer look. Teddy's Dorset Pure Filtered Honey.